Welcome back to another episode of the Lecture Center podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, and there is so much we need to talk about. I don't even know where to begin. Perhaps we should start with a short anecdote. This week's really been an interesting one for me because I was able to engage in a healthy debate about what it means for us to be free versus what it means to be oppressed. This is the talk of the town. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Freedom of the oppressed. And you might think that the answer is cut and dry, but I'm telling you it's not. And that's because the popular belief is that the oppressed are those who hold no worldly power. That means no political or economic power. Because the oppressed have no money. They have no power. And because of this, they have no voice or say so over themselves, over their own life. I want to make the argument that this could be a half-truth. Because when we look at the world through our eyes, we see that. We see that people who are poor typically have no voice. They really have no say-so. But fortunately, in the Western world, there is a way to rise above poverty, to rise above your economic status. Never mind all of this stuff about the so-called invisible oppressor. And I'm getting into it, but I'm not going to go too much into this part of it. Because it really is a belief that has been hammered into the minds of too many people. Hammered to the point where people really feel like they are powerless. And I really don't think that being so-called oppressed means that a man is powerless. And the definition of the word is quite tricky because it asserts that those who are oppressed have little or no authority over their own life. In other words, they simply can't self-determine. Their problems, their mistakes, their lackluster life is blamed on the so-called oppressor, be it the system or the man himself. It's simply not an oppressed person's fault. It's not their fault that they didn't achieve or accomplish anything in their life. So if you're poor, it is the oppressor's fault. If you don't have any money and you're living in abject poverty, it's the oppressor's fault. If you're killing your fellow man in the street, it's the oppressor's fault. I don't know about you, but I have a problem with this way of thinking. I just think that it undermines the resilience and the true power of the human spirit. And what it's saying is that man has not the capacity to live on his feet and by his own merit. Man just simply can't do anything on his own. He's not only helpless, he's worthless. My goodness. This kind of thinking disempowers people and renders them forever dependent on external agents. And that is what we see. And this kind of thinking is exactly what fosters the welfare state and eventually despotism. It really does. That is what causes it. This frame of thinking. Because people who feel they are powerless and have no voice, which means they're essentially disenfranchised, are always going to look for someone to save them. They want to depend on someone or something because they don't trust themselves. You see, the fact of the matter is that all men have power until they relinquish it. The very belief that someone or something can seize power would mean that it never had it to begin with. And I'll say this. We have power. However, power is something that must be cultivated. It's like a seed, and it lives within all men. It must be cultivated you have to take care of yourself. You have to love yourself, and we're getting into that. Because that is the essence of it. And if you don't have it, it is reflected in the life that you live and in the fruits of the labor or lack thereof. What you have contributed to the world, what you have done for yourself and others, reveals itself in the life that you live. let's keep going with this. So what I think we really ought to discuss is the definition, the true definition of the word power, what it is and what it is not. And I would say that when it comes to the human being, power has less to do with his social ranking and his standing in the world and more to do with the moral disposition of man. And what I'm really referring to is the moral uprightness of man. Integrity is what we're talking about. Integrity within the realm of morality has to do with how man treats himself. And by this, I mean self-love and self-care, because it follows that how a man treats himself will be similar to the way he treats others. If you treat yourself well and good, you're going to treat your fellow man the same. What we typically think of as powerful is a man's socioeconomic standing in the world, and also if people perceive him as affluent and influential. Power, it seems, is the know-how, the ability to get people to follow you, trust you, and do what you want them to do. You see, it's believed that if a person has this kind of authority, he's powerful. So in short, basically, people think that a powerful person is a manipulative person. Friends, this is not the truth. Power has nothing to do with other people. It's not about asserting authority or trying to get others to do what you want them to do. That's the definition of an oppressor, or some master who wants to enslave his fellow men. You see, true power is with those who release the desire to do this. They don't want to be a dictator. They don't want to tell other people how to live and what to do. What we don't realize is that we all have it within us to be oppressors. We're imperfect beings. We're not flawless. We thrive on actually inflicting pain and punishment on others because love has not been made perfect in us. We're moving about the world in fear and self-doubt most days, and that's why we want approval and we want to be somebody important. But what we don't understand is that if we really believe that power were something real and attainable, we wouldn't be trying to steal it from others, be it by force, deceit, or manipulation. You see, nowadays the word oppressed and oppressor is just tossed about. We hear it in the news, we hear it on social media, and sometimes even casual conversation. And most always, the oppressed is a person of color, a woman, or a trans individual. You see, the talk in the media and on the street, in Western society that is that, well, we're in a society that does not treat people of color, trans people, women, fairly. And that the society that we are in is a racist society. Is a society that doesn't look favorably upon people of color, favorably upon women, and that the rights of these disenfranchised groups are in jeopardy. That's the talk. And because of this talk, there is a movement that's been brewing and hot for years. And now it's made its way out of certain niches and it's in the mainstream. And it's a movement to liberate those who are enslaved by the white patriarchy. Because after all, the white man is believed to be the epitome of evil and the author of all problems that the modern world is facing. That's what they say. And this is, of course, because he has the power and is the slave master and also is the creator of the systems that run the world. These systems, as it is said, are systemically racist, sexist, transphobic, and more recently, Islamophobic. The argument is that those who are disenfranchised and lacking in economic, political, and social status could not possibly be afflicted with the disease and the evil that is racism. For you see, they assert that power or lack thereof is the cause of oppression. Friends, when man desires power, he kills, steals, and destroys for the sake of it. And you see, that, they tell us, is just what the white man has done. And they'll tell you that he's still doing it. He's doing it to this day. He didn't just do it yesterday. He didn't do it 400 years ago. He's doing it now. Hence the reason for imperialism, colonialism, and the transatlantic slave trade. It was for economic gains. And of course, economic gains lead to hegemonic power. The moralists, as I call them, say that this is what built the Americas. Retribution is what they're out for. That's what they want. But if we circle back to the argument that I made so eloquently from the top, the argument that power is not economic or political, that has more or less to do with man's self-love and his willingness to commit to living a life of integrity, is the point. I also said that power can't be taken, it must be relinquished. Think of the concept of power like the vampire you must invite into your home. The vampire cannot simply come into your home to suck your blood and kill you. You must invite him in. So it is like this with everything in life. This is what it means to have power. You are the power that the vampire desires. He wants your lifeblood, but he can't just take it. You must invite him into your life, and once you do, you've given him authority over your soul. So it's the false belief in victimhood. The victimhood of sovereign beings is indeed a falsehood and contradiction. All men, and I mean all men, are born free. It's because of their own ignorance that they do foolish things. No man is a slave. He's only seemingly enslaved because he doesn't know that he's free. Ponder on that. He gave away his freedom because he's a fool. He didn't know what he had. You see, nothing of true value can be taken from man. That's why the vampire can't just barge into your home. Most people will think about life in a trivial way. The matters of life are reduced to childish and meaningless ones. And I say this because there are people who will listen to this and say, what does she mean nobody can take anything from me? At any time, somebody can rob me of my jewelry or take my money. And I say this. Oh my goodness. That illustrates my point. We give value to things that have no real value. If a thief wants your money, give it to him. Material things, although we need them while in the world, are replaceable. The true value is in what can't be bought with material things. The values in courage, integrity, long-suffering, selfless service. All of those are virtues. Virtues are priceless and can't be taken. No despot or tyrant can rob a man of his integrity. And at the end of the day, that's all we have. That's all a man has, his integrity and other virtues. This is what he has cultivated during his life on earth. When we die, and we all will, we can't take anything else with us. It is the virtues, love being the highest, that are the true power of man. It's love that allows for man to release fear, self-doubt, and put on the badge of courage. It is courage that grants man the ability to live his life on his feet, independent of people, places, and things. He can care for himself, providing not only food, shelter, and clothing, but warmth and vulnerability. Man can finally learn how to be accepting of himself, and that includes forgiveness. And this is so important, friends, because most people can't forgive others because they can't forgive themselves. It takes courage and compassion to forgive yourself. It sounds like it should be easy, but it's not, because most of us battle with self-condemnation and, in more serious cases, self-loathing. And that's the reason why we condemn others and actually hate others. It's really because we've turned those feelings from the inside out and projected our negativity onto others. And negativity really is what occurs when power is flowing out of us. And that's another example of how we simply relinquish power unaware that we're doing it. And a lack of self-love is the cause of the relinquishment of that power. And not only this, when we don't love and accept ourselves, we're abusive and we think unkind thoughts about ourselves. Power also flows out. You see, it's this exchange, this exchange of nothing and nothing. My grandmother used to say, nothing from nothing leaves nothing. So it's an exchange that equals naught, because the powerless cannot take anything or give anything. Negativity and the thinking of negative thoughts that render negative action cannot produce power, because the power that existed naturally was negated. Now, I don't know if you're following me. Here it is again. I'm going to say it again plainly. A so-called oppressor cannot take power from one who really has it. Therefore, if a man is unsuccessful and lacking in his life, it is because of himself. You see, the power that he thinks was stolen from him was a power that he himself never had, because he did not do the work necessary in his own life on himself to cultivate that power. And that power is love. Friends, we cannot use the political definition of words to describe spiritual matters. All of man's dilemmas are spiritual. Our problems are not political or economical. That's because we're not inanimate beings. We are souls who are in the world, but not of it. If we are to understand who we are, where we come from, and where we're going, we must learn to accept the truth of who we are. Well, I guess that sums it up for me. I want to thank you so much for joining us right here at the Lecture Center. I want to thank you for listening. And if you like this kind of talk, please subscribe for more. And also be sure to check out the YouTube channel, the Lecture Center. That channel has a lot of original content, and we're always looking to produce more. Please feel free to follow, like, and leave a comment. The time is now.